Good morning and welcome to the Watchdog Wire weekly update on March 7th, 2026. It's about 9:02 a.m. And here's what I plan to cover today is I'm going to talk about Reagan McKinney and some stuff going on with her and what I reported on in the past week. Mount Orab, gift that keeps on giving, and then elected official NDAs, and finally the disappearing candidates for office in Claremont County because of a rigged primary system. So those are things I all reported on. Then I'm going to talk about a bunch of things that I have not reported on. I said yesterday that I've been so busy that there's things I haven't reported on that I want to report on, and I have a note on my wall of things I've actually recorded that I haven't even put out at this point because of just not having the time, hours in the day to do so. So let's kind of jump back here and jump into what I plan to cover today. And the first thing that I want to hit on is Reagan McKinney. So I don't know Reagan McKinney. Where I live is right on the border of Hamilton County, and I'm really not that familiar with Reagan McKinney's real estate practice. I don't see a lot of Reagan McKinney signs around where I live. But she's engaged in, there's 2 lawsuits against her. There's a complaint, and there's been some complaints in the past. I don't know if statistically those are a lot, a little, what have you, but I got a lot of people that come to me about, cover Reagan McKinney stuff. And I want to make sure to do that, but I want to do it in a fair way. And I've continually asked Reagan McKinney to do an interview with me or to at least have a statement on some of these things. So in the past week, I had a couple of reports relating to Reagan McKinney, and the first one was associated with this incident that took place. I don't know when exactly. There was an affidavit involved, and I don't know when exactly it took place, but it might have been in 2021, but it was part of a December 15th complaint to the Ohio Department of Commerce, I think, and a December 14th affidavit of 2025.
I wasn't, dude. I was a car leak behind you. A car leak.
Ask her. You were all over my fucking ass.
It's a firearm. Okay, that's fine. You're on my property. I can put it down now. You're on my property. I can put it down now.
Okay, so there's a lot of crazy in there. One of the things is that you don't have a right to just put somebody down if they're on your property. Apparently they both had weapons there, and I think I've confirmed that through other sources that both of them had firearms at that event, and that's part of a complaint. I don't know how it does or doesn't reflect on real estate practices, but it is kind of relevant and it's newsworthy because it was filed as part of a Department of Commerce complaint against Reagan McKinney. So I don't know all the circumstances. I would love to talk to any of the parties involved. I'd love to talk to Reagan McKinney about it. But obviously it's a bad idea to follow somebody to their house, no matter what happened on the road. Call the cops if somebody's done something to you on the road. I believe that Reagan McKinney and the house where that took place are in the same neighborhood in Mount Orab. So I covered that. And then I did an interview with lawyer John Jonas, and John Jonas has been responsible for John Jonas he or his law firm is engaged in both of the lawsuits against Reagan McKinney, and he filed the complaint against Reagan McKinney and a inspector, Dale Cook, that's alleged was not properly or is not properly licensed. So I did that interview, and I would like I said, I think that Reagan McKinney, it's always difficult. You have the right to say nothing, right? So if you're whoever you are, public official, public person, private person, you have the right to stay, not have any announcement. But when you're a public figure and stuff like this comes up, it's always a calculation as to whether you address it or don't address it and how you address it. Like, don't say anything. There is have a published statement. There is do an interview. And I think that Reagan McKinney would be well served by, at a minimum, doing a statement on these things, at a minimum. Through a third party, I've been told that she will be willing to talk about them once they're adjudicated. But I think that that's when you're in a public position and you're in a high regard or high business regard in the community, I think it's hard to just ignore stuff. And we'll see. Mr. Jonas seemed to imply that there was going to be more coming in terms of his litigation and other things relating to Reagan McKinney. We'll see. And I was glad to do an interview of him and appreciated his candor. Frankly, it was more candor than I expected. Okay. So now let's go back to Mount Orem, to the next thing, Mount Orem. So what do I have? 4? I got a misspelling there. Zane. It's Zane, not Zaid. February 17th recap. Zane Cordry, March 3rd council highlights, and the Joe Hauser call. So, let's look at a few of these here. The February 17th recap, maybe I'll skip past that. After the February 17th meeting, I had been there and recorded it, but I did not put anything out related to the meeting. And as a result, I didn't really have any, I've just felt behind. I was just busy. But it was the day before the new meeting, or the morning of the meeting that just took place, I think on March 3rd. So I put out my 6 highlights from February 17th. I actually think it was a good idea, like not intentional, but to have kind of a recap of what happened in the prior meeting. And one of the things that I cut out as more of an excerpt of that is Zane Cordry, I think a lot of these people, I bring up on this whole deal with the NDAs. I bring up that, there's 3 ways to get rid of the NDAs, I guess. One is just tear them up and say, F you, sue us in New York, because the NDAs say they're governed by New York. So is some company going to sue elected officials in Ohio and New York? I don't think so. And if they do, I don't think it's going to go anywhere, because there's going to be no real jurisdiction in the matter that's going to play out when it involves elected officials and conflicts with Ohio law. The second thing would be something like get prosecutor Zach Corbin to literally get off his ass. I mean, it literally is get off your ass, Zach Corbin, and have an opinion that these things were not legal. You should have been asked for that opinion before they were signed, but you can do it now, and that would give people an out. And then let them come after, let them try to do something then when a prosecutor in Ohio has an opinion that the NDAs were not legal. The third thing is resign. And if you're not going to do 1 or 2, resign is a good option, because if you resign, you basically mooted the NDA because you've resigned. So that's kind of my take on what should happen with these NDAs in Mount Orem. But that's what should happen anywhere. I mean, these NDAs, the idea of elected officials having NDAs, I'm sorry, it's wrong. Okay, it is wrong. And it is these people thinking like there's some sort of, important person. People put comments about people lining their pockets and all that kind of stuff. I don't think, I think people lining their pockets is very, very rare. Okay. What's scarier is these people do their, basically sell out their citizens for basically nothing, just because it makes them feel important. They're getting patted on the head by Lord Farquaad DeWine or Jobs Ohio or whatever, and they feel important. They feel like they're part of something, and they just do it anyway. And it's kind of scary. So I put out Zane Cordry, though, to me is a special case, because he says such stupid things. He says such stupid things like your time's up, your time's up, your time's up. Just obnoxious. And I think the guy thinks he talks a lot. And I think he's a great example of keep your mouth shut and let them think you're a fool, or open your mouth and show them you're a fool. And he has certainly opened his mouth and shown he's a fool. This is him saying he doesn't want to go along with the majority. If it plays.
Here's a Zane Cordry highlight from March 3rd, 2026 in the Mount Orem Council, where Zane lets everybody know that he doesn't want to go with what the majority wants.
So therefore, I don't want to be like, oh, well, I'm just against it because that's what the majority wants.
This is your elected leadership that is Zane Cordry.
Okay, so that's just really dumb to me to have that be your position, and it just shows better keep your mouth shut, Zane. Okay, so then there was the March 3rd council meeting, and at the March 3rd council meeting, there was 2 of the 3 items introduced by Eric Lang were passed unanimously. The 180-day moratorium on data center permits, a 180-day moratorium on small modular nuclear reactors. The third thing, which could have been up for its third reading, which was on changing the zoning code to disallow small modular nuclear reactors. That did not get read a third time because there's another thing, the fourth thing that was on its second reading, which is to repeal the improperly passed zoning code in Mount Orab. And that fourth thing would make the third thing irrelevant. Why would we be changing the zoning code that we're trying to repeal? So that's why that got held off. Okay, so I did an update on that. And in the update, let's see if I can, get to where it is. I'm looking at the video myself here. And in that update, I'm going to back it up a little bit here. We'll see if I get to a good spot. Franklin DeWar really kind of lays it to Hauser.
So that was a lie. You lied the first time at the beginning of that meeting. You lied to me. Why? Is the first question. And you lied to them. Why? Why'd you lie?
And then Rick Gecke, who I think is very unethical, he tries to basically say that, oh no, the mayor didn't say there hadn't been any contact. The mayor had said there hadn't been substantive negotiations or substantial negotiations or something to that effect.
Joe said there were no substantial negotiations with the company for 6 to 8 months, and that's true.
No, I said contact. It's on video. You said you go through Rory's and you go through that. I simply asked why'd you lie. Either you're lying or he's lying. You can get this far and you can get people to vote you out.
That was complete bullshit, and Franklin kept pressing, and the mayor ultimately responds as to why he lied, I don't know.
So why'd you lie? Is the first question. You don't know why you lied.
Which begs the question is,
okay, so the mayor doesn't know why he lied. Okay, so this is this person, I heard that he was like a bus depot manager or something. He's ill-equipped for this job. Maybe he's a nice guy, I'm not saying, but he's ill-equipped to be the mayor. He has continually proven himself to be, it's almost like he doesn't know what he's doing is lying and unethical. It's like he just is used to that, and so it's not quite shocking to him, whereas it might be shocking to a regular person that he says, I don't know, to why he lied about contact. And the reason it was about contact, he had said in a prior meeting on the 17th that there had not been contact for 8 months or something like that. And then a records release, which I think I obtained, other people might have obtained it, showed that there, yes, absolutely had been contact, like in January. And there was an attempt that might have actually set up a call. So the why you're lying is just kind of a bizarre, answer. And then the last thing is, just last night I put out this call that was Terry Burcham talking with Mayor Hauser, and she does just a fantastic job at walking through and talking about asking him questions in a very straight up way, which I highly encourage. Okay, I highly encourage. People don't make speeches. Okay, just get to a question and then awkward silence. Question, awkward silence. That is the way to break people down, not give them a big speech. You're not going to convert these people with a speech. What you're trying to do is get information out of them. Okay, and so not to convert them. None of them are going to have some conversion where they go like, I just realized talking to you that what I did was wrong. Ain't going to happen. So let's look at the very beginning of this, because here's the shocking thing. Right at the beginning, I put an excerpt from it where he talks about 2 councilmen going to New Albany to check out data centers last year. Hold on a second. I didn't think we knew that there were data centers. That's what's so bizarre. These people just go in a circular reference of lying. So here we go. Oop. You got to turn the audio on.
Well, I know last year, I think it was last year, a couple of the old council members went up to up north to look at a data center. Oh my God, I can't. New Albany.
Mm-hmm.
And they went up and looked, and the guard let them in and was looking around, and at that place actually.
So before the last Mount Orab council meeting.
Okay, so the point is, he doesn't even realize how damning that is, right? That he's saying that we had councilmen go to New Albany to check out data centers last year. Right? Does he realize how damning that is? like like that with all the bullshit, we didn't know what it was. We didn't know what DB Stew was. We didn't know what the NDAs were. We signed them to get disclosure. We never got any disclosure. It's all lies. I mean, it is all lies. And as my Polish friend would say, maybe if you're pathological in lying, it's, the question is, you are either a liar or your brain is faulty. Either way, you cannot be in leadership. Remember that line. It is either that you are a liar, Merhauser, or your brain is faulty. Either way, you cannot be in leadership. Okay. All right. So that is Mount Orab. The next thing I had on my list of things to talk about is this whole clown deal in Scioto County, where you have a councilman, a commissioner defending NDAs with public officials. Okay, you get to be a special place. So this guy's named Scotty Powell. I went out, I saw the article about it. I did something on it. And in the article, I looked at the guy's site. I couldn't even tell whether he's a Republican because he doesn't have that he's a Republican on his own website. I had to go to Ballotopia to figure out what party this guy was. I figured he was a Republican or an independent, but it's like, who is this position of secrecy? And it takes pot shots at Adam Byrd. And I'm actually not an Adam Byrd fan, but Adam Byrd does more than 90% of the reps in the House to actually try to react to voter input. So I don't know what Scotty Powell's deal is, but it's crazy. Elected official NDAs are wrong. And by the way, a lot of that people say, well, this is the way it is now. In today's world, we got to do it this way. We got to have NDAs. We got to have government involved in every big transaction. We have to have some sort of crony capitalism is the way it is. And I say, no, okay? I get if you're Mount Orab and you're saying we got to compete with another place, so we have to do the same shit they're doing. So at a statewide level, we should stop this stuff, okay? Because last time I checked, look at our state. The more the government, just like communism, the more the government carries the water on individual transactions, the less we have going on in Ohio. The job of the government is to create an environment where the private sector and the invisible hand of capitalism can raise all boats. But instead, we've got Lord Farquaad DeWine negotiating individual data center deals, and everybody's sucking at the tit, and only certain players, like we bust our ass spending shitloads of taxpayer money to get an Intel plant, which is yesterday's news because, Intel is not the future, by the way, if anybody has to figure this out. Intel is a dying behemoth. Other companies are the future in semiconductors and so forth out there. So we'll see what actually happens with the Intel thing. But the more the government, so there should be at the statewide level, if anything, let's get rid of, let's disallow the government doing a lot of these things. Now, people will be scared if we don't let the government meddle in every big transaction. What's going to happen? Well, maybe we'll take it on the chin a little bit, kind of like, if you got beat in a fight. I'm not a fighting kind of guy, but I use a visual. You got beat in a fight, and then you say, I'm not going to fight anymore. I'm going to go to the gym and work out for 6 months. But when I come out of the gym, I'm going to be way better. We'll be better off if we get the government out of micromanaging individual transactions and let the private sector become more relevant and more important to that once again. Okay. So the last thing on the list of things that I wanted to talk about that I actually covered in the past week is the disappearing candidates in the Claremont GOP, in the Claremont GOP. Okay. So what happens, and we're going to talk about Warren County's GOP in a little bit here. But what happens is in the Claremont GOP, the history is they do endorsement in primaries, which I'm against endorsement in primaries. So primaries are supposed to be where the party faithful pick who they want to be their standard bearer in the general election. To have a party try to control their own primaries through their central committee would be akin to, let's not have Olympic trials to make people have to compete and get their best. Let's just have people pick who gets to go to the Olympics without any Olympic trials whatsoever. Okay. And if you do that latter approach, you end up over time with weaker and weaker candidates. And that's what we have in Claremont County. We have people that are mostly mediocrity in office and that run for office because the system protects crony mediocrity in Claremont County. So, and historically, if you don't get endorsed by the party in the primary in Claremont County, you're supposed to drop out and not even run. And they do the endorsement prior to the petition filing deadline. So you're not even supposed to file your petition. And so this really still happens a lot in certain races. One of them is judges. So we have an upcoming race in Claremont County for common pleas juvenile probate judge, because the current Judge Shriver aged out. 3 people were running, and 1 got endorsed. The other 2 didn't even file their petitions. So they weren't on the list of people that even filed petitions. So here's the beginning of this one, if I turn the speaker on.
That is the doing of the Claremont GOP and the process by which all primaries are rigged or attempted to be rigged within Claremont County to give you no choice at the ballot box. So when they hand you that card at the polling location with who you should vote for, and then you go in and you look at the ballot and realize many of these positions only have 1 person running, keep in mind that the system is designed to not give you any choice at the ballot box. So I just went and checked.
Okay, so that's that. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting. And it's funny how more and more people over time, maybe too little too late, are coming to my position that this is horrific and has resulted in us having weaker, atrophied candidates. Like look at all of our commissioners. I bet you all 3 of them won't do candidate forums because they look like idiots a lot of times. They're afraid to do it. So I'm already working some candidate forums in Claremont County. I can pretty much guarantee you they will resist them like the plague, having a candidate forum, the insider candidates, because they're afraid of looking like idiots, and they should be afraid of looking like idiots. But I've been involved in a lot of candidate forums, super fair candidate forums. And here's the recipe for a fair candidate forum is, first off, you don't let the audience directly ask questions with their mouths, okay? Because people, and it's on us as citizens, we don't ask questions, we give speeches posing as questions, and that's a waste of time. So what I've always done is have the audience write their questions on cards. You give them cards, they write their questions, they hand in their cards. You have a couple people sort the cards into topical areas like economic development, roads and infrastructure, and then you ask those questions in batches. It makes for a very even, good, deep, and a useful candidate forum. And the moderator doesn't interject their own opinions in anything. They just basically focus on the questions. But just getting the people not to be giving speeches, because when you have to write your question on a card, it really helps you to focus on what's my actual question, okay? And then having them sorted in topical areas, so you don't have questions just random like economic development here and then economic development 30 minutes later, and you don't have random questions, and you have a moderator that basically focuses on the questions. Another thing that I think is very important is there's similar questions that can be asked together. Like, we have 3 questions here that are all like this. Let me read all 3. Boom, boom, boom. Now you guys respond. But I'm also a strong believer in don't eliminate any questions. You have people all the time, and I had somebody in a forum that I was part of say, like, they had basically thrown in the trash a couple of questions they thought were inappropriate or offensive. And I remind them, like, Donald Trump got made by inappropriate, offensive questions. I'm not for getting rid of any questions. Like, is every question submitted by the audience should be considered theoretically up to a practical time limit, but I've done a lot of candidate forums. You can go look at the Union Township Republican Party page, you can see lots of video of them. It always somehow works out. Like if it's planned for like an hour and a half, I've never had a situation where we've run out of time and still had questions. It could happen, and if it happened, you can't fix that, but it's always just somehow by grace of God worked out. So I'm very much for fair candidate forums. But in Claremont County, the way the rigged primary system works, it is specifically to make it that people don't have to appear in any sort of candidate forum, because a lot of times they can't. And if the Claremont GOP wants to prove me wrong, prove me wrong. Have your endorsed candidates appear in candidate forums. It's that simple. Let them show us why they're so awesome. I mean, there should absolutely be in Claremont County a John Becker, Greg Gentile auditor candidate forum. So, but I'm sure John Becker would be good with it, and I'm sure Greg Gentile would run scared from the building, which tells you all you need to know about those candidates, I think. But I'm open. I'm probably the funny part is I'm probably the most open and minded guy. Actually, I'm very opinionated, but I'm very open minded to if somebody can wow me with their positions. Okay, so these are things that I did not cover but are coming. And Warren County GOP. So the Warren County GOP has all kind of chaos happening. Let's see if this works here. Okay, all kind of chaos. And Watchdog reporter Victoria Moorwood is, which I'd love her to be a Watchdog reporter, has a big article about it, and it misses a lot of the key point as to what's really going on in Warren County. So Warren County has adopted some of the very crooked things. Not adopted. It was like there are elements in Warren County that have adopted a lot of the crooked shit that happens in the Claremont GOP. One of that being using crony appointments into the Central Committee from people who don't live in their districts that they're appointed to represent, something we fought, our founders fought against in the Revolutionary War. Okay, representation by people other than us. They've adopted that process. A crooked element in Warren County has adopted that process. They took over the Central Committee. They used it as a way to get rid of the people that have been around for a while that may not have been good people. I'm not saying they're good people, but at least they didn't bastardize the Central Committee. And that has gone downhill from there. And thank your Ohio Supreme Court for this. Thank Judge Jonathan Hine. Thank Jeff Corcoran in Claremont County, because I had litigation over this. I think the litigation got rigged. Melina Siebert, appeals court judge, actually did a dissent as to this idiocy of basically ignore the statutes relating to political central committees, which is what's happening now. And so that's happening. The Supreme Court did not take a discretionary appeal. So, hey, as I said in there, hey, I'm cool with chaos, and there's going to be chaos. And the Supreme Court, by not taking the discretionary appeal and fixing that these central committees are just ignoring the statute, it's now blessed judicially to just ignore the statute. And these are Republican judges doing this. That's the thing you got to understand. These judges, let me come back real quick. I want to say something about this. Judges are in the political system, are involved in a lot of stuff that where they're not really politicians the same way at one level, but they really are politicians another way, because they rely more than most on Central Committee endorsements. So they're afraid to buck anything in the Central Committee when it comes to the judicial ruling, because they need their endorsements in future elections. And so therefore they'll make idiotic rulings because of their own self-interest, and which is getting endorsed by these central committees in future elections. And so that is what happens, and it's bastardized the whole process. It continues to go on. It is a mess, and it will be a mess it's a mess in Warren County. It's a mess in Claremont County, but we're so used to it in Claremont County that we don't even think about that it's a mess. It's just normal. It's just business as usual in Claremont County. But it's new to them in Warren County to have secret societies. That article talks about a secret society in Claremont County that was called the Circle. Okay, so there was a thing called the Circle that was a secret society within the Central Committee to basically ramrod things in a corrupt and unethical way in the Central Committee. Okay, so let's see what else I've been involved with. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on with Claire Corcoran and her petition, where Brian Shrive, my man Brian Shrive, is once again trying to just ignore statute. We'll see what the Supreme Court does. They may well enable it, okay, which will mean in the future, the responsibility of a board of elections to follow the statute when somebody files a protest to a candidate due to petition or other issues, that'll be optional. And that's what Brian Shrive wants. Brian Shrive wants the Shrive revised code, not the Ohio revised code. But you can go out here, and I'll put these links in there. But you get your this is the case here. I don't know why this is not. It doesn't have all the filings here. So anyway, that is I don't know why the complaints. This is service. I'm confused here. So my reply brief was the most recent thing, and then these are returns that people actually got served the complaint. So that's the current status, but I'm going to put those links out on this after this call's over. Afro Man, some of you might be aware that Afro Man's trial is on the 16th. So I hope to provide some coverage of the Afro Man trial. So what happened with Afro Man? I didn't even know about it. A lot of you probably know about Afro Man, but Afro Man, his house, it looks like he got like a totally bogus search warrant by the Adams County Police or Sheriff. Keep that in mind. And then that search warrant, they raided his house. He had surveillance cameras in his house and filmed them rummaging through his stuff, where they were, for example, looking for large amounts of drugs and hostages in his CD cases and in his suit pockets, and other idiotic things like this. So he made songs about it. Lemon Pound Cake, go check that one out. There's a few songs. And used the video from his own surveillance system, and then sold merchandise and shirts with images of these deputies on them. And it's a First Amendment case. Is he allowed to have that form of political expression? And I say yes. I say absolutely yes. Okay, that he is within his rights as a First Amendment protected speech. And the question is, law enforcement should think about before you go raiding somebody. You know, the funny part, had it been a legitimate search and he been, found arrested, found guilty of something, put in jail, he probably ain't going to be selling things. The point is, it was never a legitimate search as far as I can tell. And it was a basically manipulated warrant in Adams County, signed by Judge Gabbert, by the way. I don't know if he gave a blue apple pie speech before he signed the warrant that probably should never have been signed. But Judge Gabbert did that. And Afro Man's trial is coming up on February 16th. Okay. So let's go back and see what else I got here. Milford Wrestling. There is a Brittany Thomason, who's one of the people sued by Jason Babinek. She has her what's called anti-slap hearing on Thursday, the 12th, in Claremont County Common Pleas Court. It's at 11 a.m. You can come there. Victor Haddad was on this. Victor Haddad is very biased and recused himself ultimately after showing that he was going to try to get me. I mean, it's crazy. But slap, anti-slap is slap means it means strategic lawsuit against public participation. And what it is where you sue somebody who's exercising their First Amendment rights, basically try to shut them up. And so Brittany Thomason is a parent who brought forward concerns relating to the wrestling program based on her personal knowledge and based on people all talking about it, and wanted there to be an investigation, which there was a hack investigation, but now she ends up sued. Okay, and Jason Babinek and the team. I've never heard Jason Babinek or Tony Brothers ever say, we realized that since we were coaches in a public school system in particular, we had an obligation, and we have an obligation to make sure the girls are safe and protected. And we, although we don't like it, we have no problem with inspection on our behavior. And did we do what we should have done to create the right kind of environment? You don't hear these guys saying this. They're all their butt hurt that they, somebody had an allegation against them, so there were allegations against them that then I get criticized because I said credible allegations. And yes, they're credible allegations because the allegations were reported by the school to Miami Township Police. They've been investigated for at least 7 months now. And the investigation, and by the way, in America, you're allowed to have a view that an investigation was done wrong. And this investigation was done terrible. They never interviewed Jason Babinek at all, nor did they have him answer written questions, which the lawyer offered. They didn't record their interview with Tony Brothers. They never record their interview with Jeannie Berkeley, who was the assistant superintendent, who's the one who went to Miami Township Police on behalf of the school. If you believe what Miami Township Police says, she went there. And she was the first person, because it's so funny. When you do a hack investigation, sometimes you put things in the record that are actually, you would have been better off to not put something in the record that may or may not be true, like who actually showed up first with the allegations. But SLAPP is new in Ohio, and anti-SLAPP, it's called the Uniform Public Expression Protection Act. And it basically is to protect people like a journalist or like a parent when they are talking about or reporting on things of great public interest that are, part of, public life or public figures. And so it gives you the ability to get, the courts are supposed to prevent there being these lawsuits against those people who were exercising their First Amendment rights. We'll see how it goes. It's very early in Ohio. There's a lot of states that have had this for a long time, but Ohio just has had this since like May or June of last year, 2025. So it's new in Ohio. But the funny part is Ohio is ranked an A on this because with the statutes that got adopted in Ohio are modern ones. So there's some states that adopted a long time ago that their statutes should be modernized. But Ohio starts late to the game, but they start with, the most modern version of the statutes for protecting free expression. So we'll see what happens with that and how it goes. But that hearing is on the 12th next week. Okay. And then the last thing is I actually have oral arguments in a case relating to the Ohio Election Integrity Commission and let me find it here. Let's see here. Let's see if I put in the right. I'm typing in something here so you can't see what I'm typing in. Okay. So I'm going to put up on the screen here. So I went into the docket for it. You have to search. It doesn't let you. This is for the 10th District Court of Appeals. And this is Hicks for a Better Claremont versus the Ohio Election Integrity Commission. I got targeted, I think, for a campaign finance violation over not filing a $0 annual report. Okay. Now I eventually filed the report, but I won. So you can, then the election commission didn't allow, they would find people quote unquote guilty or liable for these ticky-tack violations all the time with no hearing, no opportunity for a hearing, no being confronted by your accuser, all that kind of stuff. You can do that with a ticket, a car ticket, right? But in these, they would fine you without having any sort of due process. And so I appealed it. I mean, so literally probably shitloads of fines have been collected under this rigged deal that the Ohio Election Commission did. So they targeted me. I actually didn't get a fine. I got a violation with no fine for good cause, but I still filed because the reputational damage of that I had a violation at all when I don't think I should have had a violation at all. And then I was bitching I didn't get a hearing. And so I won at the common pleas level. So you appeal to the common pleas level. But our illustrious, says he's a Republican, Attorney General Dave Yost is appealing that in the 10th District Court of Appeals because Dave Yost is fighting for that a citizen doesn't have the right to due process when going to be fined or fined in violation by the Election Commission. I'm sorry, the Election Integrity Commission now. The name changed because it's a long story. But so that's like the kind of crazy shit that our supposed conservative Republican fighting for your rights Attorney General is actually fighting that you don't have the right to a hearing. And so there's oral arguments in that on, I think, Wednesday next week of the 11th. And so that's in Columbus. And all right, so let's see if we're to close us out here. Let's see if I don't think I had anything else on my list for today. I'm just going to see if there's any comments that anybody have had that I can comment on. Tara Eastep asked, do we know who the council members are who went to New Albany were? I don't know. I don't know this. Okay. And then we've got somebody else. Okay. So Jobs Ohio is fundamentally corrupt. And hold on, let me put this up here. Okay. Okay. Because Jobs Ohio has special provisions that allow it to be secret from the citizens. And remember, John Husted, at the time that this stuff was brewing, a lot of these things were being incubated. John Husted had a special role with Jobs Ohio as lieutenant governor. And so again, a supposed Republican that is for, so somebody told me that Republicans, I think with Adam Byrne in interviews, like Republicans are for transparency and Democrats aren't. That's fucking bullshit. Okay. Most of these people are uniparty. Just remember that most of them are uniparty, and they are like secrecy, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. Okay. This one, I think the answer to this is, since the property has already been purchased for the Mount Orb data center, is there really a chance to stop that development? I think yes. So I'll just leave it at that. You can go, it doesn't take long to figure out cases where data center companies have pulled out of deals like this because of public outcry or that things were not done legally. Okay. So Frank Fussnecker is running for commissioner. So Keith Henderson asked, will Frank Fussnecker have to resign from Brown County Water and his trustee positions if elected? I didn't know he's a trustee. I think, okay, so he's a trustee in Brown County Water. If he's a trustee in a township, I didn't know about that, but I know he's on the board or is a trustee for Brown County Water. He already said in his interview with me that he would step down from that if he became commissioner. Whether or not you have to is something called, there is a online resource by the Attorney General office, which is a conflict of office. You can search for it, and it basically lists every place where the Attorney General has given a opinion. Like, can you be a township trustee and a county commissioner? Can you be a mayor of a village and on a school board? Can you be, and what's a conflict of interest and what isn't? And so that tome is a record of where there have ever been requests. There's still a lot of things that there's never been requests. And so the prosecutor can, I think the prosecutor, there's a few people that statutorily can ask for an opinion on whether there's a conflict of office on something. One of them is the prosecutor, and hopefully Zach Corbin has gotten off his ass and asked for an AG opinion on whether Mayor Hauser can be both the mayor and the executive director of the Port Authority. That would be a good conflict of office thing to get a, okay. This person is not smart. Okay. I got to say, I dislike your politics. What's so funny here is I don't think conservatives are fighting for anything but billionaires. What a fucking, you're a fucktard, whoever you are, because I fight against, I'm of the, Tucker Carlson wing of conservatives. So I'm always fighting against oligarchs, insiders, all that kind of stuff. And you know what, dumbass, and I'm calling this guy a dumbass, Dan Fiesel. You need to go listen. I love the Russell Brand saying, we have a lot more in common with each other than we do with any of the people that claim to be our elected leaders. Look at the people that I kind of focus on. Okay. And so if you're saying, I don't think conservatives are fighting anything with billionaires, who funds the Democrats, dumbass? Are you retarded? I don't mean that word in a bad way, but who is it that funds the Democrats? Okay. If you look at the contributions of the oligarch class, they are very heavily weighed towards liberals. Why? Because oligarchs and statists go together. Oligarchs and statists go together because oligarchs want their thing to be protected. It's why if you look at Fortune 500 companies, the more you move up, the more liberal they are. Why? Because they look for the government to protect them. But what's so funny here is, Dan, I hate to tell you this, but you were a shiny object F-tard, because what happens is the shiny objects that we want to be distracted with. So you're some F-tard that you've been trained that you should be, I don't like your politics. You fight for this. You fight. Where have I fought for billionaires? Where have I fought for billionaires? It's like these people, we have got to all learn, maybe starting with Dan, maybe Dan's a nice guy, is that we can't, that it's not, that you get this, like you get stuck in this thing like where you think it's about liberals and conservatives. If you ever hear me talking with Bill Thomas, a lot of times he'll raise things about it's liberals, it's this. I'm like, it's not liberals versus conservatives. Now, there's things liberals versus conservatives. It starts with statists who are good with secrecy, lack of transparency, certain policies, and that comes before. And you don't realize, Dan, do you not realize that whether you're liberals or conservatives, they use shiny object issues to keep us distracted while they do things like put data centers in your backyard. I mean, come on. Okay. So we're arguing over now, by the way, I'm very pro-life. I'm very pro-Second Amendment. But we're arguing over those issues at like the local level, that the local level doesn't have a lot to do with those issues. While at the other hand, we're getting effed by Jobs Ohio. Okay. So Dan, I hate to tell you, by the way, now I got to put this up here because I just ripped Dan a new one. And then Dan said this, I said, I do love your work. Keep going. Okay. So I'm sorry, Dan. I'm sorry. just so you, and I, nothing personal against Dan. I just reacted to this thing, and I'm sorry, Dan, this notion of that conservatives fight for billionaires. I think a lot of the conservatives are the ones actually fighting for a return to traditional capitalism, not crony capitalism, which is what supports billionaires. So, hey, Dan, message me, Dan. I'll buy you a beer sometime. I'm sorry for ripping you a new one. But make sure you get your full message in one message, not split it up where I'm not clear what you're saying. All right. And let's see. Okay, so person here, they do not tell you this over the phone. Okay, it says, I actually called the AG office and they said the mayor being a director of SORTA is not a conflict of interest. I was really disappointed. Okay, so they issue actual opinions. So there's a document. So if they gave you a document number and you went and got the document number that showed that they had a decision on this, that would tell you that this is the case. But so maybe they have. I have not checked. Okay, but you want to know what the opinion number is because they do an opinion on these things. It's just not over the phone, one off. So they would have issued an opinion, and I actually am under the impression that potentially Zach Corbin did or has requested an opinion on this. The opinions basically usually take a while. I mean, the opinions aren't quick, but there's actually would be a written opinion. So if you called there and they just told you, oh no, it's okay, you need to find where the opinion is, and maybe it exists, but you can go search on conflict of office, Attorney General's office, and there's a whole online resource. And then there's this huge PDF file, and you have to go look for it, search on looking for, Port Authority Executive Director. What you would look as mayor, and you would look for what are conflicts of office for mayor. Okay. Now I will throw one other thing into this mix. When they say, even if there's an AG opinion, it doesn't mean it's right. Okay. So it's just an opinion. It's not been tested in court. So somebody could still challenge it in court. And I just ripped on AG Dave Yost earlier, and he can be wrong. And, that's not unusual. Okay. In there, but they should have a specific opinion, not just over the phone. And maybe they did. Maybe they gave you an opinion. Maybe you've downloaded that opinion to read it and see what it says. The other thing is usually the opinions are nuanced, so you have to kind of read them. They're not that simple. So. Okay. Somebody has a comment here, and then I'm going to close it out. Why would the mayor and council agree to something like a data center and start on infrastructure and hope for a future? That's a perfect example of Idiotville, right? Last time, that's just insane, especially not knowing anything. When it's when in that call, when the mayor is like, we haven't got there yet. Is there going to be a pilot payment, which means a payment in lieu of taxes? We haven't got there yet. It's moronic. You negotiate that stuff. And right now, why these guys look so dumb, frankly, why they look so dumb is because they're dumb, okay? And people are dumb. There are dumb people, and a lot of these people are dumb, okay? And they are, by the way, dumb. I love stories of redemption. So if you're dumb, if you've acted dumb, you can redeem yourself, but you have to do something. But right now, you're in the dumb category. And so you negotiate that stuff up front. Imagine if they, in a meeting, when people are all bitching and moaning, they said, oh yeah, even if it was secret, but behind the scenes, we've negotiated a set of incentives where you're going to get 30% lower electric rates infinitum because of this, or you're going to get this, or they're going to build us a park, or they're going to pay for the playground that they keep raising money for, then at least people be like, huh, okay, because everything is a trade-off. Everything's a trade-off. Like I say, we need trash dumps, but nobody wants a trash dump by them. But it's a trade-off. If there was a trash dump going to be by your house and within so far your house, but you got some direct, unbelievable benefit from it, you might say, oh, okay, I'll accept that. But you got to have that trade-off, and the notion of some basically moron that was a bus depot manager or something like this saying in the future we'll negotiate something. That's crazy because as anybody knows, Amazon or whoever, they don't care about the community ultimately. They're going to go through the motions, and they have a lot of money, so that might be, get you some stuff. But they're not going to, once they already have the deal closed, what's their incentive to provide things? That's a dumb thing. Is like, Do you actually feel like, Mayor Hauser, do you actually feel like, oh, you did us a solid by giving you all these benefits, and now we know we don't have to, but we want to do this for you? It doesn't work that way, and it's so funny. Now there's a few things. Now somebody is saying that there's an actual opinion, 94020. So I'll have to go look at it, 94020. That is the opinion, but I will go look. Who was it? So this is a different person that says that's the opinion. Okay. But just so you know, if you were ever calling on a conflict of office, by the way, it's informative just that now more people know about this conflict of office thing, and you can go check it online, and then you can get the opinions, and most of them are online. You go way back in time and they're not, some of them you have to request, but they're online and you can pull them down and you can read them and you can understand what they're saying and understand the nuances. It's not as, a lot of times it's not as simple as just a black or white, even though it might look that way. Okay. And, okay. And that is that. I'm going to cut it off there. How long has it been? I've been talking almost a little less than an hour. So that is the update for March 7th, 2026. Thank you that tuned in or watch on replay. And I will throw the links that I covered in the actual resulting notice for this, so that anybody watching this on replay, or if you watch it now, you can go to the links that I pulled up. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the weekend. And by the way, way to go, Miami Redhawks. My wife went to Miami. I went to Miami. My kid went to Miami. It's the closest thing we have to something in common as a family, a family tradition other than drinking beer. We all went to Miami, and congratulations to the Redhawks, or I would say Redskins. I'm a Redskin. I graduated while it was the Redskins, and they're very successful. And by the way, before hanging up, I must say one other thing, just on this Miami thing. When I was a kid, it's about political correctness, and I'm sorry for wasting any more of your time. When I went to Miami, it was the Redskins, and there was controversy back then about changing the name to something else. Okay, and there was a Dr. Shriver, that if you know Miami, the Shriver Center, I think is named after his father or something. He did, who was like the historian for the university, and you had to take a class that was on the history of Miami University, and the class was about the Lewis and Clark expedition, the tribes, the this, the that, because Miami's named after an Indian tribe. And he used to say that, I'm afraid that if we ever get rid of the tie to the Redskins, our student population will lose the history of how did this place come about. Okay. And that is exactly what happens. My kid knew nothing about it because they didn't teach it anymore. Now they're the Redhawks, and they don't teach the kids how did this university come about as a George Washington commissioned expedition to find a place to have a university in this area, blah, 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 blah. So now they don't know the history, and they don't know that it was named after an Indian tribe. And here's the thing. How does it help the Native American community to not have, it's kind of like to not have that be part of the history anymore? Just like, you now have the thing where the Native American community wanting the Redskins, Washington Redskins, to go back to include that name because the picture was some iconic picture of some warrior Native American, and now that's lost from the history, and that's not good. Homogenizing history is not good, even when it has people that have done good and bad things in the past. It is still important to know our history, and to assume a lot of times, I'm always a politicians or F-tards, but that these people weren't all inherently evil. If they did bad things, they weren't inherently good. Okay, and they were going through a journey, and that whole journey is how we've become what we are today. So then, when we go back to eliminate it, which is what happened at Miami University, where now it's the Red Hawks and not the Redskins, and none of the kids know about the history of the university and the Miami tribe of Indians. Okay, so that's off on the left. Have a great weekend, everybody, and I'll see you with